Welcome to another segment of Critical Thought, and here's your host, Kelsey Ortega.
Good afternoon. Today's segment is God, Nature, Science. Today I'm joined with four experts, four specialists, four people who have an opinion. Throughout the show, our four opinionated guests will be joined by the real experts to support their opinion. Please give a warm welcome to our four guests. First, Kara Ebling. Kara Ebling. Jimmy Hunter. Evan Thompson. And Colton Barnes.
Hi, Mom.
Today's show will range from topics such as the Big Bang and biological evolution, reading the Bible with knowledge of the natural sciences, how God acts, and how humanity relates to the rest of nature. Let's just jump in. So all, who here believes in Big Bang and biological evolution? Why is your hand not raised?
Because I don't believe it.
We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Welcome back to this tantalizing topic of God, nature, science. It is now time to welcome our real experts to the stage. Our first real expert knows the Bible well. He created the universe. People either love him or hate him. He knows how to rock a toga. Please welcome to the stage, God! Our second real expert is famous for his evolutionary theory, wrote his own book, changed the way we think about creation. People either believe him or don't. Has a badass mustache. Please welcome to the stage, Charles Darwin! Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Now, our first topic, we'll be discussing the Big Bang and biological evolution. However, not all of the guests believe in the Big Bang and biological evolution fully. While the majority of the group is in the middle ground on believing both in evolution and in God, for the sake of this argument, Ms. Ebling and I will be arguing strictly the two sides of the argument. I will be arguing for evolution and the Big Bang, while Kara will be arguing for creation. Let's get started. From the Big Bang, which started our universe, to the first chemical hydrogen, to the very first cell, which evolved into all life as we know it, natural selection has played a major role. Why don't you explain to the audience what natural selection is, Darwin?
The preservation of favorable variations and the rejection of injurious variations I call natural selection. Variations neither useful nor injurious would not be affected by natural selection and would be left a fluctuating element.
Natural selection is one of the key features of the evolutionary theory. Scientists have proven this course time and time again, and there are countless fossils to prove this point. How can you not believe it?
Thus, the heavens and the earth and all their hosts were completed. On the seventh day, I finished the work that I had done.
You see, in the Bible, God creates all living creatures in 6 days. Within my beliefs, I don't understand how one can simply believe that all creatures came from one single cell, rather that God created them. While it is not in my beliefs, other creationists believe that the age of the earth is not, or is younger than billions of years, say around 10,000 years.
I understand where you're coming from, but how can you believe that God, no offense, created the earth and all of the creatures in just 6 days? How can you look at science like measuring radioactive decay and not believe that the earth is about 4.5 billion years old? By measuring the radioactive isotope half-lives, scientists have been able to prove that the earth and the creatures on it have taken billions of years to get where we are today. They just didn't pop up, right, Darwin?
Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in his habits.
I know that there have been geologists who have performed countless experiments with radioactive decay, but I cannot for certain say that the radioactive decay has been constant throughout the 4.5 billion years. On a side note, how can something like the Earth or an eyeball be so complex yet evolve from natural selection, since natural selection can only choose systems that are already working? Then if biological system cannot be produced gradually, it would have to arise in an integrated unit in one fell swoop or final selection to have anything to act on.
Aha! But Darwin has already answered that using the eye as an example and can do so again right now.
Well, to suppose that the eye, with all of its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. Yet reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a perfect and complex I to one very imperfect and simple, each grade being useful to its possessor, can be shown to exist. If further the I does vary ever so slightly, and the variations or modification in the organ be ever useful to an animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex I could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, can hardly be considered real.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Then I said, let us make humanity in my image to resemble me, so they may take charge of the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and all the crawling things on the earth.
Animals whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider an equal.
I agree. So we may not agree on everything. I think we both agree that humanity has taken their evolution
Or creation too far. Yes, I think we need to connect our knowledge of science with the teaching and guidelines of the Bible. Human beings can shift their power of destruction to the power of construction.
And they lived happily ever after.
Is that in the Bible?
No.
Okay, that's all the time for this question. We will take a short commercial break and come back with our 4 guests to discuss the next topic. Welcome back to Critical Thought. The next topic our 4 guests will be discussing is how science affects one's interpretation of the Bible. So, Evan, before reading the 3 authors' books, what were your thoughts on how modern science affected your interpretation of the Bible?
I think that having a knowledge of the sciences helps your reading of the Bible by making it not so literal. You take it in a more metaphorical sense. And also it helps with appreciating God's creation more and loving it more.
That's how I read the Bible as well. Me too.
Well, there are some stories that I would read literally and some that I would read metaphorically before reading the 3 books.
Okay, so what you're saying is now that you read it, before you read it metaphorically, not literally, has your beliefs changed or solidified anymore after reading the 3 authors' books?
I think that my beliefs have been more solidified after reading the books. I still feel the same way, possibly even stronger now.
Since science gives the reader a more metaphoric understanding of the Bible rather than a literal, how would one interpret the story of Job?
A more literal interpretation of that story would be that God is just punishing Job for the sake of seeing how Job reacts and feels about God later. But a more metaphorical sense would be maybe that God is trying to show Job that humans and all of the rest of creation are equal. Humans are not the center of the universe.
I agree with that as well, and it also shows that life isn't fair, and that fairness is subjective by people's own perspective.
When taken literally, it shows a much harsher God than when taken metaphorically. Metaphorically, it shows a good lesson and good thing about humanity and all of God's creation. But if you take it literally, it shows a very harsh God.
I would agree with you.
I also the appreciation and that we now see through the connection of science and religion. An example of Ecclesiastes, it talks about how in our everyday lives that things ultimately don't matter, but through science we also see that this philosophy works on a macro level, a cosmic level. Eventually the earth will die from the sun, and so this philosophy works on multiple levels.
Okay, so our next topic of interest is how God acts, and I'll just go ahead and open the floor to discussion.
Prior to studying the three authors, I believe that God worked through miracles and healed the sick when humans were not able to cure them. I believe that in order for God to work, I had to pray and request things. Now, after reading specifically Dennis Edwards' book, I've solidified my beliefs of miracles, secondary causes, and yet altered my understanding of prayer.
And I'd like to talk about what secondary causes means. Secondary causes are the events we see, interpret, and experience and understanding in our life. Secondary causes are explained through science. It allows one to see what God truly does work within and through our creation, like He's in our creation. And also, along with miracles, miracles are a type of secondary cause. They are acts that we can't understand or explain. The same act can be seen as a miracle to me and not to you guys. So it's very personal, very like it's your own opinion. So yeah.
And God is not a helicopter parent. He does not. And as Jim said, he doesn't. He's not hands-on with creation, but he's still there. He's still there. He's with us even in our darkest times, and that. If God did, in fact, actually was hands-on, it would kind of make God's morality questionable, as we would wonder what makes certain times more special that He would have to act rather than other times, and that all three of the authors that we've discussed in class, they've all shown reasons why he can't. In Miller, when he talking about Earth creationism, it shows that if God did in fact just make this world, this universe 10,000 years ago, and then just made everything look like it's older, why would He purposely trick us? With Brown he discussed this when he was discussing Job and how fairness and that God can't just be just for you and subjective. And Edwards, it would contradict our Earth's history and how everything that's happened can be explained through science, and why would he contradict him? So why would he? What makes everything this moment special if he were to actually act by himself?
I'd just like to add that, going off of you saying that God is not a helicopter parent, I think He's more of an observer of His creation. Like He is always there. He may not always act, but He has the ability to act whenever He wants, and the ability to intervene whenever He wants. He just chooses not to. And I think He just kind of watches, to make sure that everything is going well, I guess. And
He's rooting for us.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think He's just an observer of His creation, and
So you're saying that God He lets His creation create itself.
yes.
Okay. And so I agree with your guys' comment about how God is a non-interventionist and He works within the laws of nature. Will you clarify your beliefs regarding a non-interventionist God using miracles, Ms. Edling?
After reading Edwards, I've come to understand that miracles are defined as an event we cannot understand with the contemporary science that is available to us. However, this does not mean that God is working these miracles outside of the laws of nature. Thus, He is still an interventionist God, working through miracles.
When He's doing even things that can be explained could be considered miracles in the right frame of mind.
Right. I think that goes back to what Jimmy says about it's different for each person.
More on a personal level. So very well put. We are going to take a short commercial break, and when we get back, Jimmy and Colton will be leading the discussion of how humanity relates to the rest of creation. Okay, welcome back. The last discussion topic of the night is how humanity relates to the rest of creation. Jimmy, would you like to start it off?
Yeah, I believe that humans are meant to be equal with all of God's creation. You can see this in a couple of the books, or all the books that we've read, but particularly in How God Acts. The resurrection of Jesus shows God's closeness to all species. All the species were part of his creation, so they're all equal in his sight. But and so a popular thought that we have is when he came through Jesus, God was just particularly going for humans, not for all creation. But in fact, he was saving the sins of humans and all the species. So he's promising healing and fulfillment for all things because of Jesus' suffering, as well as saying that he'll always be with his creation. This is the resurrection I'm talking about.
So even animals have souls.
Yeah, that would be the thought.
I agree. I think that in God's eyes, we're all, none of us are higher up than others. Like, we all have equal value in his eyes. I think it's not uncommon for humans to think they are higher up. I think that's kind of something that a lot of humans, that mindset a lot of humans have, that they are superior. So, but I definitely think that God views us all the same and are all equal.
I agree with you. What I believe is, just like Brown, is that our relationship with nature should be kingship and kinship. We are in charge of this planet, and we're supposed to make sure it survives and thrives, rather than just take advantage of it like we unfortunately do. And
So are you saying that we are, all of God's creations matter, like all the species matter, but we're supposed to take a higher level, like our role is supposed to be, we're intelligent, we're supposed to use like our God's gifts to make it a better place? Is that what you're saying?
great power, great responsibility, and all that jazz.
What do you have to say about kinship?
As I said, even though we're lording over, we need to be able to we have to live together. We can't, as I said, we can't take advantage. We can't take advantage. We have to respect, we have to respect the rest of creation.
I would agree with that. That we would have to respect, but still have like the obligation to care for our planet.
All right. Now I want to talk about a different part of our human relation with other species, and about how the diversity is important in God's creation. So in Psalm 104, it says that without creation's variety, the world will end. And it's part of our place to keep Earth's diversity as praise of God's creation. So it kind of goes along with what Colton was saying about how, as humans, with what God gave us, our skills, we have a certain place, and we need to make sure that we all fit together, and that all of creation is doing its best. And God also emphasized that we have no power over other creatures. We are connected with them. Job said in Brown's book that while humanity has no place, let alone dominion in the wild, it remains inseparably linked to the wild.
I think what you're saying about Earth's diversity, I think you could look at that either from a religious or a scientific standpoint, because like if you're looking from it from the scientific standpoint, I mean, they talk about biodiversity and how everything like feeds off of one another. And I think, like you were saying, that like the diversity is what makes God's creation so great. So I think you could look at it from either standpoint.
That's an example of how science and religion can really, they agree with each other and they can't bounce off each other.
That is all the time we have left for tonight's discussion. We are opening up the floor to the three authors, Miller, Brown, and Edwards, who have been in our studio audience.
For Kenneth Miller. Will you go further into why you don't believe in the YEC theory?
Well, beyond the fact that it contradicts all scientific evidence, it also brings up many potential quandaries on God's morality. So, such as, why would he go out of his way to trick us? That sounds really like an awful thing to do. And also, it's very easy it would be very easy to prove, yet none of these younger creationists actually bother to actually do it. All they would have to find was a sample of a modern day plant inside the fecal matter of ancient creature.
And for you? All right. We have another question for you, Miller. All right. Why do you think the theory that science is not qualified to offer a reliable theory of what happened millions of years ago is not a logical way of thinking?
The past leaves something behind that can be observed and seen today. The present always contains clues to the past. Therefore, we may analyze the present because it holds answers of the past. We can analyze the materials of the past using the tools of today, making the past reconstructible.
All right. Thank you. I had one more question for you. What are your thoughts on E.O. Wilson?
I believe Mr. E.O. Wilson is a fine and intelligent man. I especially appreciate his research into the evolution of insects. But I disagree with him on a couple key issues, especially on the role of genes affecting the our human behavior. He believes that genes are everything. I argue that culture can still plays a part in our actions. And Miller believes there is an effect, but it's minimal. I believe it's a much larger extent. I also disagree with his assertion that science proves that God exists. His anti-religious beliefs are a big reason why so many religious people do disagree with evolutionary theory.
All right, y'all. I need to go check on my horse. Someone else up.
All right, I'll go. Okay, this is for Brown. What can Job's story tell us of the real world?
Well, creation is polycentric. It has its various centers or domains, each accommodating different life forms, yet all interlinked.
What can Job teach us about how God acts with his creations?
Well, it teaches us that God has harsh ways that's not depicted in various other stories of the Bible, and that he often tests his creation.
Okay, last question. What do you believe wisdom symbolized in the biblical texts?
Wisdom covers the ethnical ideals that promote the communal good and personal ideals that promote individual standing within the community. Wisdom incorporates both instrumental and moral values, prudence and problem solving, justice and peacemaking, self-enhancement and self-relinquishment, technical, literary, and social skills, and all wrapped up in a single package.
OMG, thanks so much. You're so great. All right, I have to go to the mall. Bye.
All right, I have some questions for Edwards. First off, why is the resurrection of Jesus more important than the rest of his life?
Using a quote from N.T. Wright, they believed that God was going to do for the whole cosmos what he had done for Jesus at Easter.
Okay. Also, could you explain the secondary causes and miracles?
Secondary causes are the events that we see, interpret, experience, and understand. These can be explained through science.
All right, last question. Why is there no competition between God's acts and ours?
There is no competition between God's action and ours. The character of divine action is such that it enables participation. The coming kingdom is radically the act of God, but it involves our human actions. Jesus calls us to a kingdom way of being, living, and acting. Thanks for watching tonight's segment of Critical Thought. Please give another hand to our 4 guests, Colton Barnes, Evan Thompson, Jimmy Hunter, and Kara Eagle.